Jake Morrison had exactly 3 talents in life: making terrible jokes at inappropriate times, accidentally breaking expensive equipment, and somehow still passing his archaeology courses despite treating ancient civilizations like they were sitcom characters. Which is probably why Professor Amanda Thorne kept him around as her research assistant, though she'd never admit it was because his complete lack of reverence for historical artifacts somehow led to breakthrough discoveries. "Morrison, stop touching things," Amanda snapped as Jake poked at a crystalline panel jutting from what appeared to be a control console. They were standing in the middle of humanity's greatest archaeological find on Mars Colony 7, an intact alien structure that predated human civilization by tens of thousands of years. The chamber stretched out like a cathedral, all sweeping curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the artificial lighting. "Come on, Professor T, this is clearly a doorbell," Jake said, grinning as he traced the glowing symbols with his finger. "Look, it even has that universal press me design. Every species in the galaxy probably looks at this thing and thinks, hey, I should definitely push that." That universal design language you're referring to doesn't exist, and even if it did, the last thing we need is you activating some kind of ancient security system that vaporizes trespassers. Amanda adjusted her glasses and made another note on her tablet, trying to maintain her professional composure while internally screaming about proper archaeological protocols. Jake studied the symbols more closely, tilting his head like he was trying to read upside-down text. "You know what this reminds me of? My grandmother's ancient television remote. She had this universal remote that supposedly worked with every device ever made, but she could never figure out how to use it. My dad would always joke that alien technology was probably more user-friendly than human technology." "Your family anecdotes are not relevant to xenoarchaeological research, Morrison." "Everything's relevant if you think about it the right way." Jake pressed his palm against the largest symbol, which immediately began pulsing with a warm, almost inviting light. "See? Totally a doorbell. Or maybe a greeting protocol. Ancient aliens were probably way more polite than we give them credit for." The console responded instantly. Lights cascaded across the entire chamber like a Christmas tree coming to life, and a deep harmonic tone filled the air. The crystalline surfaces began projecting holographic displays showing star maps, technical diagrams, and what looked suspiciously like a user manual written in symbols that somehow Jake could almost understand. "Morrison, what did you do?" Amanda backed away from the console as energy patterns swept across the walls. "I said hello," Jake replied, watching in fascination as a beam of soft blue light emerged from the ceiling and began scanning him from head to toe. "This is either first contact or I'm about to get the galaxy's most expensive medical exam." The scanning beam completed its circuit and withdrew. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a voice spoke, clear and precise, in perfect English with what sounded like a slight British accent. "Genetic markers confirmed. Neural pattern analysis complete. Behavioral assessment adequate. Welcome home, heir of the flame." Amanda dropped her tablet. Jake blinked twice, looked at the glowing console, then at Amanda's stunned expression, then back at the console. "Well," he said, "that's either the best pickup line in galactic history, or I just inherited something really expensive that I probably can't afford the taxes on." Amanda hit the floor in a dead faint. The console continued humming pleasantly, apparently waiting for Jake to say something profound and leadership-worthy. Instead, he looked down at his unconscious supervisor and shrugged. "You know what, mysterious alien inheritance machine? I accept. But if this comes with student loan forgiveness, we're definitely going to be best friends." When Amanda regained consciousness 10 minutes later, she found Jake sitting cross-legged in front of the console, having what appeared to be a casual conversation with a holographic projection of a sleek, metallic sphere covered in pulsing lights. "So you're telling me," Jake was saying, "that my ancestors used to rule the galaxy, but they just sort of wandered off one day and forgot to mention it to anyone?" The term "wandered off" significantly understates the complexity of the Great Withdrawal, the sphere replied in that same cultured accent. I am Prometheus Unit 7, an artificial intelligence construct designed to preserve human heritage and await the return of legitimate heirs. Your species dominated galactic civilization for approximately 12,000 years before voluntarily entering what you might call strategic hibernation. Amanda struggled to her feet, trying to process what she was hearing. Jake, please tell me you didn't just claim to be the lost emperor of space or something equally ridiculous. Actually, that's pretty much exactly what happened, Jake said cheerfully. Prometheus here has been waiting 50,000 years for someone with the right genetic markers to show up and claim the family business. Apparently, I passed the DNA test with flying colors, which is honestly the first test I've ever aced in my entire academic career. Prometheus rotated to address Amanda directly. Professor Thorne, your skepticism is understandable. Perhaps a historical overview would provide context. Observe. Wing D. May. The chamber filled with holographic displays showing star systems, trade routes, and what looked like the organizational chart for an impossibly vast interstellar empire. Humans appeared in the projections, but they looked different, more confident, wearing what could only be described as the kind of dramatic space uniforms that Hollywood costume designers dreamed about. 50 millennia ago, humanity emerged from Earth as the Flame Bearers, so named for your species' unique ability to adapt, innovate, and inspire other races to exceed their perceived limitations. Within 10,000 years, humans had established peaceful trade relationships with over 300 alien civilizations and created the most stable galactic government in recorded history. Of course we did, Jake muttered. Humans probably invented intergalactic customer service and made it actually work. The comparison is apt. Human diplomatic protocols emphasized what you call humor, flexibility, and the radical concept that most problems could be solved through honest communication and shared meals. Your ancestors' leadership style was considered revolutionary. Amanda found her voice. If humans were so successful, what happened? Why don't we have any record of this? The Great Withdrawal occurred approximately 47,000 years ago. Humanity's leadership collectively decided that the galaxy had achieved sufficient stability to function independently. Rather than risk stagnation through permanent oversight, they initiated a planned recession from galactic affairs, preserving their knowledge and technology in facilities like this one. The holographic displays shifted to show human settlements across dozens of worlds simply powering down, their inhabitants entering what looked like advanced stasis pods. Ships returned to Earth, bases were mothballed, and within a century, humanity had voluntarily reduced itself to a single world, leaving behind only automated guardians like Prometheus. They went to sleep? Jake asked. The entire galactic empire just decided to take a nap? The philosophical framework was more sophisticated than sleep. Your ancestors believed that true leadership meant knowing when to step back and allow others to develop independently. They programmed their installations to await genetic descendants who would demonstrate readiness for inheritance. And I demonstrated readiness by accidentally pressing the right button? Your approach to the activation sequence displayed classic human problem-solving methodology, direct engagement, intuitive reasoning, and the confidence to act despite incomplete information. Also, your genetic profile indicates descent from Emperor Marcus Chen Patel, the 47th ruler of the Flame Bearer dynasty. Jake stood up and stretched. So let me get this straight. My great-great times a few thousand grandmother was space royalty, the entire human race went into voluntary hibernation, and now I'm supposed to wake everyone up and reclaim our galactic empire? The process is somewhat more complex than that, Heir Morrison. First, you must demonstrate your worthiness through the traditional trials. Only after proving yourself capable of upholding human leadership principles will you gain access to the full inheritance. Amanda finally managed to close her mouth long enough to speak. Jake, this is insane. You can barely remember to turn in your research papers on time. How are you supposed to run a galactic empire? Hey, I'll have you know that my late paper submissions are actually a sophisticated time management strategy designed to keep professors on their toes. Jake turned back to Prometheus. What kind of trials are we talking about here? Please tell me they don't involve math, because I'm pretty sure galactic leadership and calculus are mutually exclusive skill sets. The trials assess tactical reasoning, diplomatic wisdom, and leadership courage. Standard evaluations developed over centuries of human governance. Shall we begin? Jake looked at Amanda, who was frantically scribbling notes while muttering about the complete upheaval of human historical understanding. He looked at the holographic displays showing the vast, empty territories that had once been humanity's domain. Then he shrugged. You know what, sure. Let's do this. But if I fail spectacularly, I'm blaming it on inadequate preparation time and possibly a caffeine deficiency. The first trial materialized as a three-dimensional holographic battlefield showing what appeared to be a classic military engagement between two fleets positioned around a strategically important star system. Red ships faced blue ships across a field of asteroids, moons, and space stations, with various tactical advantages distributed between the forces. The simulation of valor presents a scenario from the Third Chronic War, Prometheus explained as Jake studied the display. As fleet commander, you must achieve victory while minimizing casualties on both sides. Human leadership philosophy emphasized winning through superior strategy rather than superior firepower. Jake walked around the hologram, examining the positions like he was studying a particularly complex video game level. Okay, so the red guys are dug in around the system's main planet, and the blue guys have better mobility but worse defensive positions. Classic turtle versus rabbit scenario. Your assessment demonstrates tactical awareness. How do you proceed? Well, the traditional approach would be to either storm the defensive positions or try to draw them out with feints and flanking maneuvers. But that's thinking like a human military commander from Earth. Jake grinned and pointed at a cluster of civilian stations scattered throughout the system. What I'm seeing here is a supply chain management problem disguised as a military engagement. Amanda watched from the side, taking notes and trying to understand Jake's reasoning. Supply chain management? Look at the positioning. Both fleets are depending on those civilian stations for fuel, repairs, and food. The Red Fleet can't maintain their defensive posture without those supply lines, and the Blue Fleet can't sustain an extended campaign without friendly ports. Jake reached into the hologram and began manipulating the Blue Fleet's formation. So instead of attacking the military targets, I'm going to offer to escort supply convoys for both sides. That makes no tactical sense, Amanda protested. It makes perfect economic sense. I'll charge both sides for convoy protection, use the fees to hire neutral merchant vessels, and gradually create a supply network that makes continued fighting financially unsustainable. Within 6 months, both sides will be so economically integrated that war becomes bad for business. Prometheus processed this approach for several moments. Simulation complete. Result: tactical victory achieved through economic integration. Casualties: 0 military, 0 civilian. Long-term stability: optimal. Assessment: classic human methodology successfully applied. The hologram dissolved, replaced by a diplomatic scenario showing representatives from what appeared to be a dozen different alien species seated around a conference table. Each species had distinct physiological characteristics and, according to the floating text, fundamentally incompatible cultural values and territorial demands. The test of wisdom requires you to negotiate a trade agreement between species with historically irreconcilable differences. Previous attempts at diplomacy have failed due to communication barriers and cultural misunderstandings. Jake studied the aliens' profiles, noting their various biological needs, economic systems, and social structures. After a few minutes, he started laughing. "What's so funny?" Amanda asked. "They all want the same thing, but they're asking for it in completely different ways. Look." Jake pointed at the display. "The mollusk collective needs calcium carbonate for shell construction. The crystal singers require harmonic resonance environments for their reproductive cycles. The gas giants need atmospheric processing stations for their expansion colonies. Those are entirely different requirements. No, they're different expressions of the same fundamental need, controlled environmental modification. The mollusks need mineral extraction, the singers need acoustic engineering, and the gas giants need atmospheric manipulation. But calcium carbonate mining produces acoustic byproducts that the crystal singers can use, and atmospheric processing generates mineral precipitates that the mollusks need. Jake began sketching connections between the species' requirements. You create a three-way industrial partnership. The gas giants provide raw atmospheric materials. The crystal singers process them using harmonic techniques that generate the acoustic frequencies they need for reproduction. And the mineral byproducts go to the mollusk collective for shell construction. Everyone gets what they want, plus they become economically interdependent. And the other 9 species? They provide shipping, financing, quality control, and customer service. It's basically a galactic franchise operation with species-specific specializations. Prometheus hummed approvingly. Negotiation completed. All 12 species agree to terms. Trade volume projected to increase by 400%. Cultural exchange initiatives established. Assessment. Human diplomatic protocols successfully implemented. The final trial appeared as a command center with multiple communication screens showing various crises occurring simultaneously across dozens of star systems. Natural disasters, trade disputes, resource shortages, and what appeared to be the alien equivalent of social media flame wars all demanded immediate attention. The trial of leadership tests your ability to prioritize and delegate under pressure. As Galactic Coordinator, you must address multiple critical situations with limited resources and incomplete information. Jake looked at the chaos on the screens, then at the command interface that presumably allowed him to dispatch resources and issue orders. Instead of touching the controls, he activated the general communication system. Attention, Galactic Civilization. This is Jake Morrison, your new Supreme Overlord of Disaster Management and General Problem Solving. I've got about 37 crises happening right now, and honestly, I have no idea what most of you people need or want. So here's what we're going to do. Amanda covered her face with her hands. Jake, what are you doing? We're going to try something revolutionary called asking for help. Each system dealing with a crisis. Please contact your 3 nearest neighboring systems and explain your situation. I'm betting at least one of your neighbors has either dealt with something similar or has resources you need. For the next hour, instead of waiting for orders from Central Command, you have authorization to work directly with each other to solve problems. The communication screens exploded with activity as systems began contacting each other directly. Within minutes, natural disaster relief supplies were being rerouted from systems with surpluses to systems in need. Trade disputes were being resolved through direct negotiation between affected parties. Resource shortages were being addressed through newly established sharing agreements. And for the social media flame wars, Jake continued, I'm instituting a galaxy-wide policy that all political arguments must be conducted through interpretive dance competitions. It's harder to stay angry when you have to express your disagreement through choreography. Prometheus observed the results as crisis after crisis resolved itself through direct intersystem cooperation. Leadership trial completed. Resolution time, 47 minutes. Resource efficiency, optimal. Innovation factor, unprecedented. Assessment, human leadership methodology successfully demonstrated. Jake turned to Amanda, who was staring at the screens in disbelief. You know what the best part is? I basically just invented customer service for an entire galaxy, and it actually worked. The communication system that Jake had casually activated during his leadership trial turned out to be connected to the entire galactic network, which meant his cheerful announcement of humanity's return had been broadcast to approximately 400 billion sentient beings across 300 star systems. The response was immediate and panic-inducing. Prometheus, Why are all these aliens either running away or sending what appear to be fruit baskets? Jake asked, as he watched the incoming message feed scrolling across multiple screens. The galactic community has maintained cultural memory of human governance through historical records and, more significantly, through what you might call folklore. Your species' return was anticipated with considerable anxiety. Amanda pulled up a translation interface and began reading incoming messages. Jake, the Zephyrian Trade Federation is offering to surrender their entire merchant fleet and requesting mercy for, quote, minor violations of commercial law that probably don't even count as real crimes. That seems excessive, Jake said, reading over her shoulder. What kind of minor violations are we talking about? According to their confession, they've been charging excessive interest rates, manipulating currency exchanges, and engaging in what they call aggressive marketing practices. They're also apologizing for something called the Great Pepper Monopoly of the 32nd millennium. The Great Pepper Monopoly sounds like exactly the kind of thing that would annoy humans enough to do something about it, Jake admitted. What else are we getting? The Kronek Empire is evacuating their forward military bases and sending detailed reports of their troop movements for the past 1,000 years. They want to make sure you know they haven't been planning any aggressive expansion since the last time humans were in charge. Prometheus rotated to display a galactic map showing fleet movements across dozens of systems. The Kronek military withdrawal is creating power vacuums in 17 sectors. Several smaller civilizations are requesting immediate human intervention to prevent territorial disputes. So they're afraid of us, but they also want us to solve their problems? Jake watched a particularly frantic message stream from something called the crystalline hierarchy. This is like being the galaxy's most feared substitute teacher. The comparison is apt, Prometheus agreed. Human governance was characterized by effective problem-solving combined with zero tolerance for what you termed nonsense. Most species found this approach simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. Amanda continued translating messages, her expression growing increasingly bewildered. The mollusk collective is baking cookies, industrial quantities of cookies. They've apparently converted 3 entire star systems to cookie production and are requesting permission to deliver them as a welcome gift. I like the mollusks already, Jake said. What about the ones who aren't panicking or baking? Several deep space exploration fleets are requesting updated navigation charts to avoid accidentally trespassing in human territory. The Quantum Scholars Assembly is asking for clarification on current human philosophical positions regarding the nature of reality, and something called the entropy. Management Guild wants to know if humans are still interested in their universe maintenance services. Universe maintenance services? Apparently, humans used to hire specialists to prevent the heat death of selected star systems, Prometheus explained. Standard infrastructure management for any civilization planning to exist beyond the next few billion years. Jake sat down heavily in what appeared to be a command chair, though it adjusted itself to his posture with unsettling precision. So let me understand this. The entire galaxy has been running on autopilot for 50,000 years, waiting for humans to come back and tell everyone what to do next. That is a simplified but accurate assessment. And now that I've accidentally announced our return, everyone expects me to have some kind of master plan for galactic governance? The expectation is reasonable, given historical precedent. Jake looked at Amanda, who was frantically taking notes while simultaneously trying to process the complete revision of human history that was occurring around them. Professor T, on a scale of 1 to completely screwed, how would you rate our current situation? I think we broke past completely screwed about an hour ago and entered some kind of theoretical physics realm where the normal rules of cause and effect no longer apply, Amanda replied without looking up from her tablet. That's what I was afraid of. Jake turned back to Prometheus. Okay, so everyone's either terrified of us, desperately wants our help, or trying to feed us cookies. What happens if I just tell them all to carry on as they were, and we'll get back to them in a few decades? Galactic civilization would likely collapse within 6 months due to accumulated institutional problems that have been deferred pending human guidance. And if I try to actually govern this mess? Success probability is difficult to calculate due to your unconventional approach to leadership challenges. Jake considered this for several minutes while watching more messages flood in from across the galaxy. Fear, hope, confusion, and what appeared to be genuine excitement mixed together in a chaos of alien languages and cultural references that would take xenoanthropologists centuries to properly analyze. "You know what?" he said finally. "I think I'm approaching this wrong. Instead of trying to figure out how to be the leader everyone expects, maybe I should figure out how to be the leader everyone actually needs." "Explain." "Everyone's been waiting 50,000 years for humans to come back and fix everything. But maybe the real problem is that they've been waiting instead of learning to fix things themselves." Jake stood up and activated the general communication system again. Time for the galaxy's first group therapy session. Jake was halfway through composing what he privately thought of as the galaxy's most awkward motivational speech when Prometheus suddenly shifted to a deep red alert mode and began projecting tactical displays that made Amanda's blood pressure spike. Incoming vessels detected. Configuration matches Void Syndicate attack patterns. Estimated arrival time, 14 minutes. "Void Syndicate?" Jake asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew the answer. Humanity's primary adversaries during the final years of active governance. They opposed human leadership philosophy and have spent the intervening millennia building military strength while awaiting your species' return. The tactical display showed a fleet configuration that looked like it had been designed by someone with a serious grudge and unlimited resources. Massive capital ships bristling with weapon systems approached Mars in formation with smaller vessels that appeared to be specialized for planetary bombardment. "So they're here to kill me before I can reclaim our galactic empire?" That assessment is correct. "And our defensive capabilities consist of what exactly?" "This installation possesses significant automated defense systems, but they have not been activated for 47,000 years. Additionally, Mars Colony 7 has no military infrastructure and minimal early warning systems." Jake looked at the approaching fleet, then at Amanda, who had gone pale while rapidly calculating the time required for evacuation versus the time until the Void Syndicate arrived. "Professor T, please tell me you have some kind of emergency protocol for situations involving ancient alien death machines and imminent planetary bombardment." "My emergency protocols cover equipment failure, funding cuts, and graduate student nervous breakdowns," Amanda replied, her voice slightly higher than usual. "None of them address hostile alien fleets." "Right. Prometheus, what kind of defense systems are we talking about here?" "The installation contains manufacturing facilities capable of producing human military technology, including autonomous defense platforms, tactical computing systems, and what your ancestors called the diplomatic solution." "I'm almost afraid to ask what the diplomatic solution is." "A communications array designed to facilitate rapid negotiation with hostile forces through the application of overwhelming economic incentives and superior information processing." Jake watched the approaching fleet and made a decision that he suspected would either save the galaxy or destroy it completely. Activate everything. All defense systems, all manufacturing capabilities, and definitely the diplomatic solution. If we're going to do this, we might as well do it with style. The installation responded immediately. Hidden bays opened across the Martian surface, releasing swarms of sleek automated platforms that began establishing defensive positions throughout the system. Manufacturing facilities that had been dormant for millennia roared to life, producing weapons systems and support craft with impossible speed and efficiency. "Jake, what's happening?" Amanda asked as the chamber filled with holographic command interfaces and tactical displays. "I'm apparently about to fight my first space battle using technology I don't understand against enemies I've never met for reasons that probably made sense 50,000 years ago." Jake settled into the command chair, which began interfacing with his nervous system in ways that should have been terrifying but felt strangely natural. Also, I think I'm downloading the complete human military database directly into my brain, which explains why I suddenly know what a quantum torpedo does. The knowledge transfer was like drinking from a fire hose filled with tactical doctrine, strategic theory, and what appeared to be the personal memoirs of every human military commander for the past 12,000 years. Jake found himself understanding spacecraft design, fleet formations, and diplomatic protocols that he was certain he had never learned. Incoming communication from Void Syndicate flagship, Prometheus announced. "Put them through," Jake said, surprised by the authority in his own voice. The display filled with what appeared to be a very angry lobster wearing elaborate military insignia and surrounded by what looked like a command crew of equally hostile crustaceans. "Human Heir," the alien commander spoke in accented but clear English. "I am Warclaw Crexneth of the Void Syndicate. Your species' time of dominance ends today. Surrender now and your death will be quick." Jake looked at the alien for a moment, processing the threat while simultaneously reviewing 47,000 years of military history that was still downloading into his consciousness. Then he started laughing. "I'm sorry," he said, "but did you just threaten to kill me quickly as if that was some kind of generous offer? Because honestly, that's probably the worst negotiation opening I've ever heard. And I once watched my roommate try to talk his way out of a parking ticket by explaining the philosophical implications of municipal authority." Warclaw Crexneth's claws clacked together in what was probably the alien equivalent of grinding teeth. "You mock the Void Syndicate. Your arrogance will cost you everything, human." "Look, Crex, can I call you Crex? Here's the thing. You've spent 50,000 years building up this huge military fleet specifically to fight humans when we came back, right? That's a serious commitment. I respect that kind of long-term planning. Your respect is irrelevant. Prepare to face the might of the Syndicate." "But here's what I don't understand," Jake continued, ignoring the fact that enemy weapons were powering up across multiple tactical displays. "What exactly is your endgame here? Let's say you successfully wipe out humanity's Heir, which granted would be embarrassing for me personally. What do you do next? Declare yourself the new galactic government. The Syndicate will bring order to chaos. We will succeed where humanity failed." Jake activated the diplomatic solution, and suddenly he had access to 50,000 years of economic data, trade records, and what appeared to be a complete psychological profile of Void Syndicate leadership. The information was staggering, and it painted a very different picture than the one being presented by Warclaw Crexneth. "Oh, this is interesting," Jake said, studying the data streams. "Amanda, you're going to love this. It turns out the Void Syndicate isn't actually a military organization. They're a galactic waste management company." The revelation that the terrifying Void Syndicate was actually the galaxy's largest waste disposal service led to what Jake would later describe as the most awkward 15 minutes in interstellar diplomatic history. Warclaw Crexneth, it turned out, was not a military commander but the chief executive of sanitation services, and his invasion fleet was mostly composed of garbage scows and recycling platforms. "You have to understand," Crexneth explained after the initial hostility died down, "we've been managing waste disposal for 300 star systems for 47,000 years. When humans were in charge, we had clear contracts and regular payment schedules. After you left, everyone just assumed we'd keep working for free." Jake looked at the financial records Prometheus was displaying, which showed an accumulated debt of approximately 14 trillion galactic credits owed to the Syndicate for waste management services. "So you're not here to destroy humanity. You're here to collect on the galaxy's biggest overdue bill." The destruction was going to be more of a cost recovery measure, Crexneth admitted. "We figured if we eliminated the human Heir, we could claim salvage rights on abandoned human territories and call it even." Amanda was frantically taking notes while trying to process the fact that they had nearly started an interstellar war over garbage collection. Jake, this is actually a fairly standard business dispute, just on a galactic scale. Right, so instead of fighting about it, why don't we just fix the problem? Jake activated the general communication system, which now reached not only the approaching syndicate fleet but also the hundreds of star systems that had been monitoring the situation. Ascension, galactic civilization. We need to talk about your garbage. The response was immediate and embarrassed. It turned out that every single species in the galaxy had been quietly accumulating waste for 50,000 years, assuming that eventually humans would return and sort out the disposal contracts. The environmental impact was staggering, and several systems were approaching ecological collapse due to unmanaged industrial waste. Okay, new plan, Jake announced. Krexneth, how much would it cost to not only clear the current backlog but also establish a proper waste management system for the entire galaxy? The calculation took several minutes and involved what appeared to be very complex mathematics. Approximately 47 trillion credits for full remediation, plus ongoing service contracts. And how much would it cost to train local waste management specialists on each world so they can handle routine disposal independently? That would reduce ongoing costs by approximately 60% while providing local employment opportunities. Jake turned to Amanda. Professor T, what do you think? Does establishing the galaxy's first comprehensive environmental cleanup program sound like the kind of thing humans would do? It sounds exactly like the kind of practical, long-term solution that would appeal to human leadership philosophy, Amanda agreed. Also, it addresses a genuine crisis that everyone has been ignoring. Excellent. Krexneth, you're hired. Effective immediately, the Void Syndicate is now the official environmental management division of the restored human government. Your first assignment is to establish waste disposal systems that actually work and train local staff to maintain them. And payment? Each system pays for its own cleanup based on the amount of waste they've generated. Systems that implement good environmental practices get reduced rates. Systems that continue to be environmental disasters get charged premium rates until they fix their problems. The communication channels exploded with activity as star systems began negotiating directly with syndicate representatives for cleanup services. Within hours, the galaxy's biggest military threat had transformed into its most essential public service, and Jake found himself coordinating environmental policy for hundreds of worlds. You know, he said to Amanda as they watched the logistics displays showing cleanup operations beginning across dozens of systems. This is actually starting to make sense. Humans probably didn't disappear because they were bored. They left because they realized the galaxy needed to learn how to solve its own problems. And now? Now I think we've proven that we can solve problems, but we needed someone to give us permission to try. Jake activated one final galactic communication. Attention, everyone. This is your Supreme Commander of Snacks and Sarcasm with an important announcement. Jake, what are you doing? Amanda asked. Something that I suspect my ancestors would approve of. Jake cleared his throat. After careful consideration of galactic needs and human capabilities, I'm officially establishing the new human government as a consulting service. We're not here to rule you or tell you what to do. We're here to help you figure out how to solve problems you didn't know you could solve yourselves. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with system after system requesting consultation on everything from trade disputes to technological development to, in one memorable case, the advice on planning the galaxy's largest birthday party. Also, Jake continued, I'm implementing a new policy that all interstellar conflicts must be resolved through competitive cooking shows. It's harder to stay angry at someone when you're judging their casserole. Prometheus hummed approvingly. Assessment, human leadership methodology successfully adapted for contemporary galactic needs. Recommendation, wake the ancestors. Jake looked at the displays showing environmental cleanup operations, trade negotiations, and what appeared to be the early stages of several cooking competitions. You know what? Let's let them sleep a little longer. I think we've got this covered. Amanda looked at Jake, who had somehow managed to accidentally establish a functioning galactic government based on customer service principles and environmental responsibility. "Jake, do you realize you just became the ruler of the galaxy?" "Nah," Jake replied, settling back in the command chair with a satisfied grin. "I just became the galaxy's first professional problem solver. Much better job security, and the hours are way more reasonable." And somewhere in the depths of Mars, ancient stasis pods continued their patient wait while their descendants learned that sometimes the best way to lead was to teach others how to lead themselves. The galaxy's garbage problem was finally getting solved, and Jake Morrison had somehow managed to become good at something after all. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all.